And hello and welcome. I thought my guest would be in by the time the movie, my co-hosts and guests would be in by the time the intros were done. But I mean, this is why you try new things. um, so currently, only Robert X is in the chat. So hello to Robert X, and of course anyone who is watching in the future or who may be currently lurking in said chat. Special thanks to my patrons, Santi the Sane and GeoSam. And so today will kind of serve as a bit of a palate cleanser to the Asterix stream. And we're so aside from the aside where we were talking about Biden's election as a piece of media, which I had fun doing and was an important and topical topic. January basically kind of turned into action movie month. So, we're going to wrap it up with an exploration of admittedly one of the few films out of China that I've seen, but a kung fu movie, also a biopic by the name of Ip Man, which is and hello Noodle.
Hi there. Yeah, coming in straight live without a second. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I'd be able to add you like add you in the background while the videos were playing, but yeah,
because you thought I was going to be, because I needed a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, sure. Sorry about that. That's my fault entirely. Cool. Ip Man, let's go.
Yes. So and here's Jeff.
Oh, you're live already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I did say I had to.
Yeah.
Get a little. I badly needed a cigarette after that stream.
It's all right because I was trying something new with the video, with the intro videos.
Yeah. Okay.
And apparently the way that I that it works, the way I tried it, you can add people without it, without. So I thought I'd just be able to add you in the background, but that didn't work out.
No, because we were both late. I apologize.
You know it's going to be a good stream because there are technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties.
As you said earlier, Ring, this may be a. Hopefully, those of you obviously who just were at the stream, and myself and Noodle were in. This I hope will be a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Though
we need it.
Though I will say that while this is, a great movie, in my opinion,
it has its controversies.
Well, also, this is also a movie I would not show to children.
Yes, but that's for a totally different reason.
But that's for a totally different reason. It definitely earns its R rating for violence. Because it does not shy away from showing blood or broken bones.
And I will say, we're talking about the dude who trained Bruce Lee, so you got to expect that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously I missed the first couple of minutes. I don't know what you said so far.
We literally just started doing intro.
Okay. I will say one thing about this film. As a historical biopic, Braveheart is better, more historically accurate than this.
Well, I mean,
and I do have some things to say about
Oh.
yeah,
film and the themes.
So there is something that you have to, understand while watching this film. This is a film out of China.
Yes.
There is something that you have to understand about this film, and I will say it outright, even if Ring won't.
Yeah.
It's propaganda.
Yeah.
This is
that's what I said, but
I'm glad
I said it outright.
I'm glad you get the similar take on me. Chinese nationalism is a big. I've watched all four. I've watched 4 of them. I haven't watched the there's a spin-off, Legend of Ip Man or something. I haven't.
Yeah.
I'll say Chinese nationalism is a big theme of this series. And I can definitely get into. I will later get into the way traditional Chinese martial arts have been used in China as a form of cultural nationalism, and some of the things that have happened in China regarding that a little later on.
But I admittedly I've only seen a couple of films out of China, but every one I've seen has basically been propaganda.
I mean, we are in a more modern recently where you see, because it's important to point out as well that this film is about Japanese characters, largely, or at least it should be. And this is not the kind of film you show an anime fan. Let's put it that way. This is not a film that's particularly accurate to the time, but I think it is accurate to a particular mentality of the time.
Yeah,
it is very much as I said, a propaganda piece, and it must be taken as such and criticized as such, and that must be taken as read throughout. Yes, the fight scenes are awesome.
Yes,
it's got a great plot. It's got a good. The plot itself is great. It's very character driven, and there's a lot going on.
And it does have a lot of good inner character relationship and character development.
But it's based on a true story, so we expect that
very loosely
based.
It's a story about someone who Ip Man or Yip Man was a genuine grandmaster of the Wing Chun, which is a variant of Kung Fu. That lived, from 1893 to 1972. This is based, and obviously, to be honest, probably would be somewhat of a footnote in history if it wasn't for his the fact that Bruce Lee
most famous
student
was Bruce Lee.
Yeah,
because Bruce Lee, we have to realize, yes, a great actor, famous actor, but also a grandmaster in his own right, and trained and did a lot of training with his own students and carried on.
I will say this: Ip Man, if you read a bit about his life, actually had a fairly interesting life that a movie could have been made about without the embellishment of this. But that would have required, all my issues with this movie been said, or this series of movies been said. They're enjoyable. They're enjoyable. But you've got to understand. There's certain contexts to this. You do need to understand about things that have been happening in China over the last 10, 15 years or so that do need to be taken into account and just be aware of when you're watching this. Do not take this as anything resembling actual history, because it is not.
And I mean, just to give it a broader context as well, I'm just going to go on a tiny tangent if you'll let me for a moment, Ray.
Yep.
It's not just China that pulls things like this.
Yeah.
Other countries do it as well. You know, if we were sat here discussing the green berets, would be saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
This is not historically accurate. This is propaganda.
Or
but
any,
it represents a mentality.
Or pretty much any Mel Gibson historical epic kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Any Mel Gibson, you know.
Hey, sorry.
It is what it is.
Sorry, I just saw Bees in the chat. Good to see you, B.
Yeah, you might be able to do, to say the same about Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah, you could say it about a lot of historical films that were released at certain times when they were politically expedient.
Yeah.
And this film, I think, maybe not in the center of that category, but is definitely on the fringes of it. It's definitely been politically expedient for a film that humanizes Chinese nationalism.
And for context, Ip Man, the first one, was released in 2008.
Yeah. So this is ironically before the official campaign started in China, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But you get the feeling the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation campaign, but you get this feeling that those sort of things were there in China even before this officially started in 2012. And I am going to get on because I do want to talk about the way that a little bit, but mainly the way Chinese martial arts have been used.
And of course, and of course, it is a piece for Chinese nationalism. Especially seeing as how the last half of the plot takes place during the Japanese occupation of China in World War II.
Yes.
Yeah. My apologies.
Yeah.
So we have Japanese and Chinese characters interacting. Yes, Ip Man is Chinese. The reason I said this is about Japanese characters is because of that second half of the film.
Yeah.
Because you see them, and I think from the point of view of this film has merit. From a study point of view. But for me, the merit of this film is that, as with most films that are released that are propaganda pieces, it gives insight into the perception of a particular demographic at a particular time by someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same merit that films, American-made films about the Vietnam War have. We see how Americans viewed the Vietnamese. It's the same merit that British-made films about the Boer Wars had. We see how the British viewed.
Yeah.
And that's important because when you've got those views, cinema largely is never progressive. Cinema will always reflect the opinions of the time, usually the dominant opinions of the time for the audience it's aimed at. This is because audiences don't like to be challenged.
And because...
if you challenge an audience, you don't make a profit.
I mean, even when you try, even with certain things, when you try to be somewhat respectful of the other culture that you might be up against. Good example would be the film Zulu, which did make somewhat of an effort not to demonize Zulu people, but also kind of did the noble savage kind of thing about them,
which has its own problems, but came from a good place at the time.
Yeah, I will say there is a much better film that is not talked about called Zulu Dawn, which is kind of a prequel to Zulu. It's way more worthy of watching.
Robert X, yes. I did a lot of film studies for my undergrad because my undergrad dissertation was on film studies. That's why I used the Vietnam example, because that was literally the topic of my undergrad, proper American-made movies and the presentation of the Vietnam War in them.
Yeah.
So that's, if I make a lot of references to it, that's why, because that's what I know. The main objective of a lot of movies is to make money, particularly in Western cinema and it's coming out of Hollywood particularly. The thing is, when it's a propaganda piece, those priorities shift.
And
because especially when it's government backed, making money becomes a secondary priority.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, in countries like China, where the government has such a hand in its media. You can't really separate. Auteur theory doesn't really hold as much water when you're talking about an industry that's so closely connected with the government.
Yeah. I mean, we're even getting to that stage right now with some Hollywood stuff. It's no accident that we've had an explosion of superhero movies over the last 10 years, right as the West has been losing wars right, left, and center and needs a morale boost. That's not an accident. That's a reaction to the context. And that's just one example. That's not to say the American government is funding Marvel, for God's sake, though. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is directors, writers, screenwriters, they all know what is going to sell and what the people want to see. And they will always release into the context they're in. And the context will always illuminate the reason why a film was made.
And I'm going to...
The films around ancient Rome, and that started coming out in the early 2000s, right as America starts fighting wars and going, there's reasons for these things. And a lot of people don't realize the impact cinema has on their political viewpoint, because they think it's separate from the news and the world, but it's not. It's all the background noise, and it's designed to... Cinema is a great tool of propaganda because most people don't think to criticize it and don't think to engage critically, because they think, oh, it's just 2 hours of... I'm
going to outright say it. The first film shown in the White House was a horrific propaganda piece.
Oh my God. I know what it is. I know it. Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
Which I will say was cinematically groundbreaking for its time.
Yeah.
But that's about all you get.
You can justify watching it from a point of view of studying race relations, cinema, even literature to an extent, and politics. But if you're watching it because you think it's a good film, you need to seriously reassess your politics and priorities.
Yeah.
It had an awful... that film, I think, had an awful lot to do with the KKK's resurrection as well.
Yeah.
I think as well, that is a film that is an example of something that can be a technical masterpiece.
Yeah.
And still be horrendous and terrible. You know, it's in the early 2000s, we had that phase where everything was CGI.
Yeah.
We just CGI'd everything because it was the new toy and it was fantastic and it was amazing. And we could make sparkly colors and bright lights and blue people.
And of course, like even in regards to animation, everything looks like Pixar now, with the exception of Into the Spider-Verse, which is definitely going to have to be a show sometime.
Yeah, but we're getting to the point now where Pixar has realized, oh, this is no longer working. It's become saturated, and Pixar is slowly changing its style.
Yeah,
and it's doing that, and Pixar is going back to a more Disney version of what Disney used to be.
Yeah,
and it's creating this feedback loop. But that's what happens. What's popular becomes even more popular. What works. But you have to always think about, technically something can be fantastic, Yeah. That movie that came out in the early 2000s, what was it, Avatar, with the blue people? That movie grossed 3 million at the box office, but how many people know a line out of it and can quote it off the top of their head?
No. The Jarhead clan is about the one thing I can remember, but Jarhead tribe. That's about, but I'm probably not even quoting that.
You see, that's how CGI is done because it was the latest toy. But then you look at things like Titanic that had so much CGI in it, but that stands up, and that stands up because the CGI was used in moderation for what it was needed for.
I think
Jurassic Park.
What Avatar did was bring 3D filmmaking sort of because 3D filmmaking had been done before, but not very well. One thing I will say at the 3D, it did spark a little wave of we got to make everything so it can be shown in 3D.
Yeah,
and us post-nods who get migraines and can't watch shit in 3D without getting headaches are still having to deal with that. Please stop it.
And I have my own issues with James Cameron's Avatar. You know, even though I haven't seen it, but that's not the topic we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I gave it as an example of a time when CGI was massively overused because that wasn't a film, that was an animation.
Dances with Wolves in Space. Let's just leave it at that.
Basically.
But so, you know, aside from being a Chinese nationalistic propaganda piece, because it's a movie out of China.
It's not even that though, because I think the Chinese were looking to make themselves the you can understand the urge to make yourself the ethical victim. You know, and we only kill people with their own weapons. There's a message that this film carries quite a bit. Or we only fight back after we've been attacked.
Yeah.
And there is every country does it after a war's over, tries to go back and kind of whitewash and
then of course the big theme of this is why Chinese martial arts are superior to Japanese martial arts.
Yeah, because we can take 10 Chinese people and
we're at I will put I mean, you could argue that from the from the way it's plotted and shot, but the text of the movie would disagree with you because Ip very much says it's not the style, it's the man.
Yes, but the undercurrent of that is it's the Chinese man.
Yeah, the reason the thing is, I've watched all the sequels as well.
Yeah,
there's a big thing: the superiority of Chinese martial arts.
Oh yeah,
is a massive theme throughout this franchise.
I've seen Ip Man too, and
which is Rocky 4-inch Hong Kong, basically.
Yeah, basically.
And it again, as well, there's no getting away from the fact, if one style can take on 10 men who are fighting in another style, this style is clearly 10 times better.
Yeah.
So it is very much.
I'll get to that later because I've got some stuff to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but Ip Man, it structurally is very much structured by its fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
because first you have the other one of the other masters from the town who has a
friendly.
Yeah, a friendly private duel.
Yeah, let's call it a sparring match.
Yeah, a friendly sparring match.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, it's behind closed doors. Nobody gets dishonored by losing.
Yeah.
It's just, and to be fair, I don't know if either of you have ever practiced any kind of martial arts. Sparring matches are very common. This is how you practice This is how you improve. It's perfectly natural to want to spar someone who you think is a good challenge.
Karate and Taekwondo, but two I've done.
And Taekwondo. Yeah. So again, perfectly natural to spar. I've got stories from doing Taekwondo where, someone didn't take their glasses off and that ended not great. Although to be fair,
and throughout that fight, no one's really throwing serious punches.
Yeah, it's a sparring match. That's exactly what it is. It is not I want to kill you, I want to hurt you. It's let's have some fun, let's warm up, let's get a bit of practicing.
But
it's a friendly.
And Ip is basically going, hit, big hit.
And it is. I'm sure we have a football fan in the stream. You'll say it's a friendly, isn't it, Jeff? That particular fight. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a malicious. It is a friendly sparring match. It's okay, or even even if they were it's it's like the end of Rocky 3 where Rocky and Apollo Creed have that friendly boxing match between the two of them at the ends, even though we only get to see like the start of it, but it's the whole thing of just between you and me kind of thing, who's the best? This is like, and they have that friend, the fight ends with them having like a friendly dust up kind of thing,
it's one of those, it's not for bragging rights, it's not for anything, it's just because but I'm curious, let's find out. And this is, again, there's a real and this is where we begin to see the ethical makeup of this character created. This character is always shown to be very ethical. Now, we have seen in other martial arts films that when characters get into private sparring matches, they don't stay private.
Yeah.
This one is
private and is meant to be private.
But this one doesn't stay private, but that's because someone is watching in that neither one of them knew about.
Yeah. Which is fair because you can't blame them for what they didn't know.
Yeah.
But it is very much I like this first fight scene.
Yeah.
I think this first fight scene has all the hallmarks of what I would call the traditional mentality you're taught when you're taught martial arts, of honor, of respect. We're sparring for fun. We don't mean any harm. Because the entire point of martial arts, and I'm sure you said, Scummy, you've done martial arts, the first thing you're taught in jiu-jitsu, in taekwondo, I've got friends who do karate, the first thing you're taught is this is not something you use to harm other people. This is self-defense.
Yeah, that's a general rule. That's a general rule. I will say that's not necessarily the case that's not necessarily how it's always presented on a worldwide basis. I will say
saying as someone who learned what little I learned in basic training.
I will say
I'll say, for further context on the philosophies of it, please watch the Karate Kid series and Cobra Kai.
I will say as well, as a kid who had to do jiu-jitsu in a class with people who were bullying me at the time, my teacher did very much give me the opportunity to, shall we say, end the tournament on my terms. After a term of learning it, she holds a tournament, and honestly, it was I'm not the Karate Kid, I swear.
Can I just ask a quick, slight off-topic question for you, Noodle? But what started you, Japanese or Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
Oh,
don't remember.
Taught in a Catholic school.
Okay, yeah.
Probably Japanese. I don't know.
Well, I think because everyone's I think generally most people now think like the Brazilian jiu-jitsu is one of the most
Yeah.
dangerous martial art forms in the world for like grappling type stuff.
Yeah, no, it wasn't grappling stuff. It was more holds and lifts than anything else.
Yeah.
So it's probably the Japanese style.
The Brazilian stuff, the Brazilian stuff obviously had its origins in Japan, but let's put it this way: Brazilian style of jiu-jitsu, pretty much every MMA fighter, professional MMA fighter, has done a level of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, no, it was nothing like that. We spent a lot of time learning. I said the word katanas, but that's not the word. I'm going back 17 years.
Katas.
Kata. That's a foot. That's a foot. Yeah. It's called sometimes like taekwondo. We used the British word form, but that's more of a routine.
It's more of a routine. Our teacher told us it was the word closely translated as dance.
Yeah.
The only one I remember from Taekwondo was called Chonji, which was basically just a basic form of blocks with punch.
But that's best to put a pin in that, because we can actually tie that in later in the discussion.
Because I've got to say something about. I do have to say something about various martial arts styles and traditional Chinese ones. I'll just put something in the private. I'll put a name in the private chat ring and see if you were thinking the same thing. Okay, but just give me 2 secs.
Okay.
See their facial impressions here.
But
yeah.
So, anyways, it gets Ip meets his brother.
Of course you did, Jeff.
In the restaurant, and his brother's like, hey, if you'll fund me, I'll make you a business partner when I set up this cotton mill.
So it's
again,
it's at this point it's still friendly, it's business.
And it just gives him the money and says, pay it back out of your profits,
because Ip is very well off. Ip is very well off. And
it's kind of implied that he's so well off because it's because he's the best in the town, and the town is so focused on martial arts.
Yeah, it's kind of implied that he's a bit of a made man. That there's no that he's a self-made man kind of thing. No, this isn't mummy and daddy's money.
But, then the, Master Jin learns that, someone's been running his mouth about him losing the duel.
Yeah.
And it causes a fuss, which, attracts the police. And we get our first nationalist statement.
I'll just say on the self-made thing, at the age of 16 he went to St. Stephen's College, a secondary school for wealthy families and foreigners.
So he's about as self-made as Elon Musk.
You got to understand, this is pre-revolutionary China as well. So generally
what we're saying is he didn't come from nothing. He wasn't.
He wasn't.
He's not
he wasn't. And spoiler alert as well. With this, neither did he fall into poverty during the Sino-Japanese War,
which says a lot.
Which the film depicts. Just spoiler there, but
So, anyways, the policeman, pulls a gun on Ip. Gesturing with it, saying, this is the age of the gun, i.e. the age of the West. And Ip knocks out the revolver cylinder.
There is a real East versus West thing going on here, isn't there?
Yeah.
Back in two, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a bit of if you think you're a man, fight with your hands, not with a weapon.
Yeah.
A bit of that going on.
And it picks up the cylinder and the bullets that fell out and says, we're civilized here. It's just a friendly discussion.
Mm-hmm. Which says a lot.
Yeah.
It's this old versus new. It's potentially urban versus rural. It's tradition versus progress.
Yeah.
It's east versus west. And we that, to be fair, that dynamic appears in a lot of martial arts films.
Yeah.
Not just this one, and not just in a context of China versus Japan. In other martial arts films where the aggressor is a Western person, we see that same dynamic.
Yeah.
So there's kind of the undercurrent of the accusation of Japan is becoming a bit too westernized.
You know what? I'm thinking maybe next week we should either do lethal or not lethal weapon. We should either do Shanghai Noon or what's the Jackie Chan that's not lethal weapon, but it has weapon in the name. Jackie Chan and what's his name? Where they're both where Jackie Chan is a Chinese cop and they're in LA. Rush Hour.
Rush Hour, that's the one.
Yeah. Next week we should either do Shanghai Noon or Rush Hour and basically turn this discussion around.
The Shanghai Noon would be a great one to have a discussion about the dynamics between East and West.
Yeah.
That's going to be the better one for doing it because it's a comedy as well, so it'd be nice and light. And when it's comedy, it gets to be satirical and it gets to take things to extremes that we can have fun with.
And thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. But yeah, Shanghai Noon, I'm up for that.
Okay. I actually haven't seen it.
Yes, you have. I made you watch it.
No, I've seen Shanghai Nights. I haven't seen Shanghai Noon.
You are very lucky you didn't tell me that before you married me. That's like one of my all-time favorite movies. What are you doing? Well, where have you been? Have you been living under a rock? Don't you dare make some evangelical comment right now.
Well, I did by saying yes.
For anyone watching, I am teasing. This is how we tease. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, now we have to do it if you haven't seen it because you need to see it.
But, speaking of Jackie Chan.
Wait, so 5 years of wet shirt don't break jokes and you didn't understand them?
Yes. But anyways, speaking of Jackie Chan, that kind of brings us into the next fight scene in the next phase of the movie.
Yeah.
Well, where, Ip's wife is, pressuring him to not to spend more time with the family, not be so focused on his martial arts. And, but anyways, some out-of-towners from northern China, come in and basically start kicking, start decimating every martial arts school, one after the other.
This is a tradition. This is a very... I'm going to compare this to other things that happened in Europe because, again, China, Japan is not my area of expertise at all. To go into a country when you're occupying them and to take out their most likely fighters and their intelligent people at the top and their upper echelons is normal. It's a strategic move. There is nothing particularly out of the ordinary with that, even though this film presents it a little bit like that.
It's more that, the leader of the out-of-towners is basically... He's there to start his own martial arts school, and he's gonna, he wants to make a lot of money. He wants to prove he's the best by kicking everyone's ass, kicking,
and so he behaves dishonorably. This to me, this fight scene.
He beats all the masters of the schools. And then they're like, well, you still haven't beaten the best in town because you haven't fought, it.
Now, this to me, it's almost got a feel of gang warfare. Going about, I'm going to take out all the leaders and take over their territory.
Yeah.
What it feels like. Oh, tribal warfare, possibly.
Yeah.
So again, it's not unusual. But this fight with it, this is, again, it's not exactly honourable, is it? The way it goes.
So, I will say, the reason I said, speaking of Jackie Chan, this is a very Jackie Chan-esque fight.
It is. Well, I think it's a Jackie Chan-esque fight insofar as how it goes, but I think it has a malice to it that Jackie Chan doesn't have.
It's a Jackie Chan fight if a Jackie Chan fight had edge to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pointed and it's deliberate, and it's a deliberate show that these people are willing to be dishonorable, are willing to humiliate, are willing to play dirty.
Yeah, but I mean, even the but this scene is played for comedy.
It is played for comedy, but in a film like this, given the rest of the undercurrents, the fact that it's played for comedy is.
But where the film is expanding its scope because we've gone from the fight, but the friendly fight between two masters in the town to a more serious fight, though still played for comedy, between someone from northern China and Ip, who is portrayed as being Cantonese.
Yeah.
And I will say that the bit about gang warfare, I was going to put a slight pin in that, because after that fight, the scene where he's getting the presents from all the merchants in town was very Godfather 2.
Yeah. It was very, you come to my daughter's wedding.
I'm a few seconds behind because I only just got back. So I was listening in. But I'm going to, once again, use the line from the Karate Kid about something. John Kreese said, "This is a karate dojo, old man. You don't just drop a challenge and leave."
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you get this whole, and all joking aside, this stuff I know has happened in Western martial arts dojos. I've known this shit to happen between karate schools in the UK. Okay?
Yeah, pissing contests and shit. Yeah,
there is a pissing contest, and possibly as well that the fact that there are a lot of frauds in martial arts as well.
Yeah.
And we got to be aware of that. And I actually do know of a story of a guy who's like legitimately a 5th dan black belt in karate, in Goju-ryu style karate, and studied in Japan for a couple of years before he came back and opened his school here, and was dealing with some amateurs and actually basically challenged to get any one of your black belts on the fucking mat.
Yeah,
I know this shit happening.
It is that. It's that thing of put your money where your mouth is, arsehole.
Yeah.
I mean, have a go if you think you're hard enough.
Yeah.
It's that attitude, which has its place. And if its place is anywhere, it's definitely in something like martial arts, where you shouldn't open your trap unless you can.
And we do absolutely, and it absolutely, you've got to absolutely understand this. There are a lot of goddamn frauds in the history of martial arts who've claimed shit that they cannot do and that is impossible to do. Anybody knows, people have heard of people like George Dillman, who does this ridiculous no-touch chi bollocks.
Bullshit.
Ashida Ashida Kim, who claims to be like a ninja, but will never. And then the creme de la creme of martial arts frauds, who had a movie made about his supposed life story, Mr. Frank Dukes. And that movie was Bloodsport. I will say, as a biopic, it is one of the most faithful to the source material. It's just that the source material is such bollocks to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you feel about the second fight of the film?
I would say all of the fight scenes are so well done in this whole series of films.
Yeah.
They are very okay. There is there can be a real element of slapstick to martial arts, especially films. I mean, Jackie Chan deliberately realized that there was
and like I said, well,
this is portrayed to be somewhat. Ip Man is portrayed to be somewhat serious.
Well, though the second fight with the with the out of town out of town master is very like I said before, it's Jackie Chan with an edge.
Yeah,
you can definitely see the Jackie Chan influences.
Yeah, I will say as well, we're saying this, comparing it to Jackie Chan is not an insult. Jackie Chan is a master.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan is a fully trained fighter.
Absolutely.
He's also an excellent actor and a fantastic.
You've also got to understand that Jackie Chan's two big influences on his acting career is Bruce Lee, and Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
Which explains everything.
Yeah. Jackie Chan understood that there was great value in comedy that could be done with kung fu movies.
And the great thing about Jackie Chan is very much summed up as you've got to know the rules before you know how to break them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jackie Chan is very good with his safety, with his fitness, with everything. Yeah. And he is constantly by other actors. There's a film he did called Who Am I, where he jumped off a building. But there was a bit where he was essentially scaling a glass building. He did that without wires. This is back in the 90s before health and safety went nuts.
Yeah.
But he does all his own stunts. So anything you see Jackie Chan do on screen, unless it's physically impossible and obviously CGI, that's Jackie Chan doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's not just an actor who relies on stunt doubles. He is a fully made up tribal master.
I will tell you this, that when it comes to Jackie Chan, when he first did Rush Hour, which you mentioned earlier, had to be told that, hey, you can kind of do things. You can kind of do things like with stuntmen here, or we can do this over where you're only a foot off the ground instead of actually hanging off a building here, because Jackie Chan was used to actually doing this shit for real.
Yeah, because health and safety in China when he came to America.
Yeah, also, Hong Kong cinema of the 80s and 90s, there was no budget.
And I will say, if you ever seen some of the Jackie Chan films before he came to America, with some of the where they played some of the outtakes at the end of the movie, are fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and he brought that with him to America.
I mean, this guy,
Jackie Chan films.
There's a because I think it's Rumble in the Bronx when he got his testicles ran over by a motorcycle with a stunt that went slightly wrong.
Rumble in the Bronx. That one, I remember watching that when I was about 8 years old, and I think it was a bit gory for me at that age.
Yeah,
but so like I said, so back on track. Ip Man, wins the duel.
Mm-hmm.
Even parrying the sword with a feather duster. Like I said, it's a very Jackie Chan fight.
Yeah.
we have that Godfather-esque scene where everyone is so thankful that he defended the honor of their town that they're giving him goods.
They're like genuflecting around him at this point, aren't they?
It is very much it is very Godfather. It's paying your dues and
and
you show respect to the Don some respect, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then all the color washes out, and it transitions into the Japanese occupation.
Yeah. And this is where the film goes from. And I think that's part of the reason why that fight scene there was a little bit slapstick, to give that little bit of lightness before it got really heavy.
Yeah.
Because it's an interesting transition that they changed the film style.
Yeah.
It's not like, if this had been made in like 30, 40 years earlier, I'd have been saying, okay, they ran out of colour film or they were on a budget, something like that. But we're talking about digital. We're not talking about a time when, you've got to worry about how much film costs.
I mean, really, there's sort of 3 acts to this, isn't there? Almost, but there is the.
It's a very traditional 3-act structure.
Yeah. With the duel between the 2 Wing Chun masters to begin with, then the issues with the out of towners who come in, and then obviously the big act is the Sino-Japanese War.
Yeah. And Ip is depicted as falling into poverty because the Japanese took his house.
Yeah. Which I mentioned earlier, it was bollocks. He actually moved out of Fushan. He left his house.
Yeah.
But he did actually go to stay with a someone who'd been a student of his in real life. He was stayed out of Fushan and was living with a student, but did not fall into poverty.
Yeah,
real Ip Man did not.
Well, and that's another difference, is because up to this point, Ip Man, Ip is portrayed as very reluctant to take on a student, to take on any students.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is kind of, this again is another one that's quite common in martial arts films, isn't it? It's the reluctant master.
Yeah.
And it's as if he's waiting for someone who's good enough.
Yeah.
Because the master
or a reason to try, or a reason to train. I mean, the classic example would be the Karate Kid.
He's got to have a reason.
Mr. Miyagi isn't initially wanting to teach Daniel karate.
Until he sees that Daniel is being bullied.
Not even that so much. He sees Daniel's being bullied, but was like, would you train me? He said, why? He says, how about revenge? He said, well, no, I'm not going to train you if that's your motivation. It's not until he meets this other karate, the other master who's teaching the bullies, that he makes that decision. I'm going to train this kid.
Because now it's about the honor of the art itself.
Yeah, it's about
the honor continues, and this thing of honor is a massive theme in martial arts films.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Though I will say, mechanically speaking, he kind of has to fall into poverty for the rest of the movie to happen.
This would irritate me. This is a common thing. Like, it's the idea of what's that Bible story about the dude who loses everything but still
Job.
Yeah, it's the Job trope, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's he's lost everything, but he still has this one thing that makes him a great human being. Whoa, he's a hero.
Also, thematically, it kind of has to happen too. In that all of the, with the exception of the final duel, which is in the town square, all of the fight scenes take place in his house.
Yeah. And the thing is, he's got to be seen to be actually impacted by the occupation. Yeah. This was why I sort of said this is a film about the Japanese and not the Chinese.
Yeah.
This is a Chinese film about the Japanese, which is, yes, he is the main character.
Yeah.
But it's not his story. The story is about what's happening around him. In that sense, he's almost a reactionary character. He's
a stand-in for the Chinese nation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I do hesitate to say it, but from a Western perspective, and I say that very clearly, from a Western perspective, he is he's one of those protagonists who doesn't do much. Because from a Western perspective, he doesn't forward the plot. He reacts to the plot. He doesn't forward it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't particularly agree with that reading of any book that says that. That's not from a Western perspective, because from a Western perspective, there's very little understanding or sympathy for the idea that survival is a choice.
Yeah. There is only one instance that I can think of where that's a valid criticism, and that would be Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Yes, but Raiders of the Lost Ark is just all the characters are completely irrelevant to the plot.
Yeah.
Not just the protagonist.
Yeah. Still a great movie, though.
You get different. So what I'm getting at is you have your stereotypical hero's journey.
Yeah.
Where at some point the protagonist does something that they then become central to the plot. The plot revolves around them.
Yeah.
Or this is
not one of those stories.
They are pushed into because something happening to them, or as this, like a classic trope, something happens to a friend, which is what happens here.
Yeah.
Which
where the
interaction where he feels he needs to do something. Yeah,
where the owner of the restaurant gets beaten to death because he wouldn't yield in a 3-on-1 duel against the Japanese general.
Yeah, to be fair, this is a common trope in Jackie Chan films as well. That someone else takes a kicking, so he stands up and says enough's enough. And this is what I mean by he's an active protagonist. He's not a passive protagonist.
Yeah.
In Western media, a passive protagonist is someone who doesn't take ownership of the plot. The point is that Western media, because like it or not, Western media is born of imperialist identities and is largely made by cultures that are used to being the aggressor and the oppressor.
Yeah.
They don't understand that survival is a valid choice.
Yeah.
And survival is an active decision, is not a passive decision.
And we do kind of see a little bit of that discussion in the portrayal of Mr. Lee.
Let me put it this way: there are no action movies about Anne Frank.
Yeah.
Because in Western canon, yes, it's great that she hid and tried to survive and wrote this diary, but she's a passive protagonist in Western canon. She doesn't actually do anything to fight back. Okay. Whereas Western canon prefers characters who actively do something. It's the difference between Anne Frank and somebody else.
And I think this is one of the things, in a way, where we've talked about, obviously, the propaganda elements of this film, but yet it's a film that's very palatable to Western audiences as well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the way
because of these things.
Yes, the underdog story.
Yeah. And and it's all so it finds the little tin box that the restaurant owner had dropped.
Oh dear, sorry.
And decides to go to the martial arts tournament, to find out what had happened to his friend. And then we see Master Jin, the first person it fought in the movie, who had won a duel in the previous scene where the restaurant owner gets beaten to death, where he wins a duel, he gets his bag of rice because the Japanese are, it's like, if you win you get extra rice. And then he it's like, I'll take on 3 guys, and he gets his ass kicked. And he goes to grab the rice that he had already won, and the colonel shoots him.
Yeah.
And
I beat you with my hands, so and this is, again, it's that thing earlier, as I was saying, it's dishonorable to use a weapon.
And the colonel actually gets chewed out by the general for doing that, because it's like, this is a place for tournaments.
Yeah. If you want to fight, then fight, but fight like a man and fight with your own 2 hands.
Yeah.
The message there. Yes, there's a lot of toxic masculinity in it, but a lot of it is honor-based as well.
And I guess it's another, like in the discussion of this film as a film about Japan produced by China, it's a statement that the Japanese are too westernized, because once again it's the gun that's the focus of the issue. But
yes, it's the
also, because there is a there is a thread on Twitter that was doing the rounds about how the active and inactive protagonist are cultural concepts. I am going to drop a link to that thread. It's not something I wrote, but it is well worth a read for anyone interested in the topic.
Okay.
And so Ip,
obviously when he sees the execution, obviously, because then Ip is enraged and demands to take on 10 of these Japanese karate students at once, despite the fact they say that the plot is he has not practiced his own martial arts in quite some time.
Yeah.
And again, this is into that. It's superior even when you're out.
This is this is a big thing throughout the whole of the Ip Man film series. The superiority of Chinese traditional martial arts over Japanese martial arts, over Korean martial arts, whatever, over things like boxing, whatever it may be. I will say those. Spoiler alert for Ip Man 3. He only manages to draw with Mike Tyson. Yes, Ip Man. Anyone's not familiar with this, Ip Man fought Mike Tyson in one of these.
Yeah.
So we went from loosely based on reality to a fucking fairy tale in 3 movies.
No. Mike Tyson was playing the part of a villain in there that was had boxing. I think it was almost, let's give Mike Tyson an acting role, but let's not have his ego bruised by getting his ass kicked in it, which if they'd probably asked Tyson to get his ass kicked, he probably, for film purposes, he probably would have done it. But from what I know of Tyson, he'd have probably been willing to do it.
And honestly, it's probably the best fight scene of the movie. In my opinion.
The 10 karate guys, yeah. But I find it very weird, because obviously, if you know Japanese sort of history or whatever, karate is not initially a Japanese martial art; it's an Okinawan martial art. and its original name was Kodate. It was when the Japanese obviously annexed Okinawa. Kodate was part of like Okinawa National Park. But when they basically people decided that we're going to assimilate into Japanese culture and take on the Japanese language, they changed the thing to karate, and even adopted the system of belts, which was a judo thing. Like the gi and the belts was a judo thing.
So here's the thing. Do you know if it's actually karate or is it a taekwondo? Because I don't quite.
Right. Okay. Taekwondo in itself is a fairly modern.
Oh, okay. So it would have been karate.
It would have been karate. Yeah. Taekwondo is based off an older thing called Tang Sudo.
Yeah.
It's a Korean variant of karate and so on, but Taekwondo is sort of a blending of those things. Tang Sudo, by the way, is the thing Chuck Norris is a grandmaster in. It's a Korean variant. But Chuck Norris is also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, because he's kind of stayed with the times.
He likes his grappling, does Chuck Norris?
And, also, this is the point. This is the point of the movie where things are serious.
Yeah.
The first duel, it's a friendly duel between, it's a friendly practice sparring match. Then, the second one is a little bit more serious. It's, a Jackie Chan fight scene with an edge to it.
So it's getting progressively darker.
This scene against 10 men, it just moves like from one to the other, taking them down quickly and brutally for the entire scene.
Yeah, it felt like a Jackie Chan scene, didn't it? It felt like Jackie Chan.
I'd say it could be a blend between.
Sorry, not Jackie Chan, a Bruce Lee scene.
Yeah,
it was a blend between maybe a Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, and Chuck Norris kind of scene here.
Yeah.
I
think it had elements of all real pointedness of a Jackie Chan. Sorry, of a Bruce. Why do I keep calling him of a Bruce Lee?
Yeah.
Scene, something like Game of Death, where bang, 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 one after the other.
Yeah.
And there's an aim, there's a goal,
and
it had that darkness to it. That edge.
And this is the part of that. Well, I mean, you had already seen plenty of blood when when the restaurant owner got beat to death and when Master Jin got shot. But this is where you start to see real injuries in the fight scenes.
Yeah. And it's not pretty.
No.
We should say that.
It's not at all.
Not pretty. It's the injuries. Is this the one where he hits him in the ear?
No,
no, that one's later, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that one was just that.
But yeah, you see like you see one of the students like get their leg like broken.
Yeah, I mean literally snapped in half. Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. I think it's kind of depicted at least 8 out of those 10 students he killed. And the other 2 you saw writhing around the plane were probably permanently damaged.
And again, there is. To me, it feels like this film is making Ip Man the forerunner to what Westerners recognise as the famous martial artists. We see it's almost like it's backtracking and saying, this is where Jackie Chan learned this. This is where Bruce Lee learned this. This is where Jet Li learned this.
Well, this is what I said. The real Ip Man probably would not have been much of a historical figure for the fact, if it were not for, even though he had a very interesting life, if it were not for the fact that Bruce Lee was one of his students, he probably would have been in like the footnote in history, to be honest. There certainly wouldn't have been any movies made around his life, even though this is a highly fictionalized And like I said, the preface at the beginning of this stream, when Braveheart does a better job of historical accuracy than a film, you kind of realise,
I have to. Yeah, no. I think Braveheart does a better job historically accurate, but only because there are no dragons.
Yeah.
That's kind of the level we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Well, they might have had the Battle of Stirling Bridge without the bridge in Braveheart, but at least there was an actual battle.
Yeah.
In real life, where
pulled out of the screen.
Man never fought the Japanese in any. He was way out of town and in safety, in a safe place while all this shit was going on.
Yeah,
but
people need legends and people need myths.
And we'll
come out of a war, and that's what propaganda's for.
Yes, and there's definitely something
familiar with American history, which I don't know how that's possible in this day and age, but you never know. You know, in 1,000 years, someone's going to dig up Captain American comic and think he really did fight the Nazis. That's
I'll touch on something maybe a little later about how he ended up in Hong Kong in the film, but we'll save that towards the end, okay?
But so. Anyways, the the general, wants to fight him because he's got to prove his superiority. But it goes into hiding after after chewing out the interpreter for being a collaborator.
Yeah. I will point out that from the point of view of the Japanese, this story is a classic 3-act tragedy. With the hubris of the Japanese at the center of it.
Yeah.
It's a classic inciting incident, tragic flaw, consequences story.
And the general, Colonel Sato is definitely, just cartoon evil villain. But the general actually is a bit more of a complex character than what you'd expect in most propaganda pieces.
I have my opinion.
For a propaganda piece, you could probably argue that he's not one-dimensional as Colonel Sato, who is almost the way he's depicted almost reminds me of some Golden Age comic depictions of Japanese people.
The thing is, with it, you have to tap into the mentality of what the audience would have been. And the thing is, because he's more than one-dimensional, he is actually held to a higher standard that he then misses. And therefore, the fact that he behaves in that way is the idea of he's quite clearly the man trying to be honourable in an impossible situation.
Well, the thing is, I think his motivation really becomes he wants to test himself against Ip. That is he wants to test himself against Ip Man. That is, which really I think is what leads to the crescendo and everything that kind of follows from that scene with the karate students. And obviously, as a Japanese, as a Japanese nationalist, he is spouting the virtues of karate over Chinese, any kind of form of kung fu or whatever, or Chinese martial arts. But his main thing is, I want to get to this point of, I want a one-on-ones with this guy.
Yeah.
That is his big thing. I want to draw this man out and have this duel with him.
But, there is a bit of, side plot as it hides out in his brother's, cotton factory.
I'm sure you just reminded me. Sorry, I'm sure there is a film, isn't there, where someone challenges Jackie Chan to a fight, East versus West, and he refuses. And that's the line in the film. The guy said, "Well, fight me then, East versus West." And he refuses. I'm sure there is. I've seen that in a Jackie Chan film. I know I have.
Yeah.
But
so
Gramsci, it's 4:25 in the afternoon in the UK.
I just typed it, just coming up to 4:30 in the UK.
Yeah, and so we get, so it turns out the out-of-towners have gone bandit. And are harassing the cotton mill for money because we stole your goods. Now you got to pay us for it.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a Bruce Lee movie.
The
one where
his first movie, wasn't it?
The one where he's in Rome. With
that one,
the
with Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris, yeah.
Yeah, the one, where where the gangsters are harassing the restaurant, so he teaches them.
Yeah,
we do get a bit of a training montage where Ip trains the factory.
Can I say, Ring? I hope you're appreciating my self-discipline. That we've mentioned Chuck Norris several times, and I haven't resorted to the temptation of doing a Chuck Norris joke yet.
Yeah.
I feel other YouTubers would have taken the lower road on this one, but
well, to be fair, I'm surprised Ring hasn't made a Chuck Norris joke yet.
Well,
we could do that as a closer.
Yeah,
that's Chuck Norris joke each.
So, anyways, so that this is where we're gonna unpin the discussion on katas, because. Because you have this training montage where Ip Man is, having them do their katas, and they're like working, and then they'll stop to like spar for a few seconds or stop to do, katas. And
yeah.
And
the thing is, that's a fairly good representation of how training in martial arts goes. I will say that much for it.
Yeah.
And anyone who thinks katas are a waste of time, they're not. They're how you develop your form in sparring. Because there's no point in being taught a block if you don't know how to actually hold yourself as you block.
Yeah.
Which is what the katas are for. So, yeah. That's just my tuppence worth on those. Because katas get a bad rep, I think, especially in some Western films.
Yeah.
And in some Western practices. And
there's a use to them. I mean, it's it helps with a lot of like memory for set moves and whatever. But as I can say, a lot of set routines, should we say, that come from especially some Chinese martial arts, do not necessarily work in real life situations. And I'll get to this towards the end when I talk about.
Yeah, it has to be choreographed exactly right for a particular set of movements to work in some Chinese stuff. It looks cool on TV, but that's choreographed. Don't try it in real life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we'll get to that. I've got to talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
And so, the bandits show up again, and we have that, and we have another, another fight scene that's more of a battle scene, as it's kind of like an equal fight between the mill workers and the bandits, and then Ip shows up.
Yeah.
And this is where you get the ear injury.
Yeah. which is made me cringe.
Oh.
I will say, because
I will say this. I know we're just talking about Ip Man, but that ear injury actually comes up in one of the sequels.
Yeah.
Because the bandit shows up in Ip Man 2 in Hong Kong and helps Ip out a bit.
You deafened me. I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The bandit like kind of redeems himself a little bit in Ip Man 2.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I'll take your word for it.
We also learned that Kite Boy had who's the brother of the restaurant owner, had been with the bandits all this time.
Yeah.
And Ip hands him the tin box from his dead brother. And inside the box is the kite that had gotten stuck in the tree.
Yeah. So it's I feel like number 2 is definitely then a bit of a sentimental.
Yeah. And
look back.
And the kite boy, cries, and we see the kite blowing listlessly against the ground.
Listlessly, yeah.
Yeah. And then someone tips off to the Japanese that Ip's been hiding in this cotton mill, and the Japanese show up.
Because of course they do, because there's no movie without an antagonist.
Yeah. And Ip, shows up to, basically say, okay, I'll fight you. It just, let the villagers go. Let the
my
workers
people
go.
A bit of a Moses moment.
Yeah.
Which is, again.
Well, I'd say if this were a piece of Western cinema, more of a Jesus moment, sacrificing himself for the.
Yeah. It's that, isn't it?
Yeah.
This one for me, I think I see where they're going with it, and it is necessary to the hero's arc, but it has its issues.
Yeah.
It rather annoys me because it's this savior archetype, isn't it, that they've that they're leaning into, and it annoys me in most media. Does this savior archetype, because like, why are people so passive? Like, there's a difference between trying to survive and taking more than any human being should ever take. Everyone's got their line, and why is no one hit theirs yet?
Yeah.
Which is there does come a point where you've kind of got to stand up and say enough's enough.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's always the savior who has to do it first, because people won't do it of their own accord, which is quite irritating.
And
although accurate to life.
Yeah. And so, the wife and his son are being carted out for Hong Kong. While Ip is going to the duel, and you get a good contrast, because opening of the film, it's got all different, kinds of flags, and it's bright and cheery because this is the martial arts street.
Yeah.
When it gets to the turn, to the duel, to the final duel scene,
it's the exact opposite.
Well, yeah, the colors washed out. It's dilapidated, and there are just Japanese banners everywhere.
Yeah. And then we have the final duel.
Yeah.
Stealth, which is
yeah. I mean, which is the thing where ultimately he ends up he dominates the karate guy really in that fight. I mean, he gets a few moments in, but Ip Man dominates the Japanese guy throughout the majority of that fight. And and it is the whole thing. Hey, this is how superior Chinese martial arts is, kind of thing. With this, which is a very common thing throughout this entire series of films, is that you are battered around the head with how good Chinese martial arts are compared to any other form.
And after he beats the general, Colonel Sato
shoots
Ip Man.
Yeah. But Ip Man, of course, survives.
Yeah.
And
just a flesh wound.
Ends up beginning a new life in Hong Kong.
Oh, and we have a we have a postscript of
yes. Okay. Do you want to say what the postscript is, and I'll tell you, and I'll say what the true story of this is.
Yeah. So it says that Ip Man moved to Hong Kong and started a Wing Chun school.
Yep.
And has a lineage of 2 million plus disciples, the most famous of which is the eminent action star and martial artist Bruce Lee.
Okay. The film somewhat depicts that Ip Man goes to Hong Kong to get away from the Japanese.
Yeah.
The fact that he goes there in 1949 tells you something very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The war of the Japanese has been over. The real Ip Man was a member of the Chinese National Party. I forget the actual name of it.
The Kuomintang.
Kuomintang, yes.
Yeah.
He's a member of the Kuomintang. He was a supporter of Chiang Kai-shek. What happened in 1949? The Chinese Communist Party came to power under Mao Zedong. As an open supporter of Chiang Kai-shek, it was probably best for Ip Man to get out of mainland China.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So this is very, very bright. This is not mentioned in the film, but it's almost this is the propaganda element.
Yeah.
This is the propaganda element, which is very prominent in this entire series of films.
Yeah. Essentially alluding. Yeah. It basically alludes to the interior strife in China. What with the out of towner character. But kind of whitewashes it away by making Ip Man a Chinese hero, hero for China.
Yeah, it's rehabilitated this guy as a hero for China. Which in a way, yes, the real man was a Chinese nationalist, and this film is a big on Chinese nationalism. but he was no supporter of the Communist Party. He was very openly a supporter of Chiang Kai-shek, and so that's a big part. The historical revision is obviously, as I said before, do not take this as an actual anything to any resemblance to real history is purely coincidental. Is the but I have to say something. I've been building this for a while. About the whole theme of the superiority of Chinese martial arts. Even though, now I will say initially, obviously, this started before the official campaign in China that started in 2012. Which is called the Great Rejuvenation of the Chinese Nation, which Xi Jinping, the current, aka Winnie the Pooh, he hates that. There go my chances of entering China ever again. It was a big. I was supposed to go there last year, Noodle. I was supposed to be doing the wall. I don't. Yeah. A lot of this was a big thing of kind of. There was a big element of cultural nationalism in this. And even though Ip Man comes a little bit before this, obviously the mood was there, and it was trying to demonstrate the superiority of Chinese martial arts, which I put a name in the chat earlier, Ring. Which leads me maybe into the very sad story of Zhu Xiaodong, a Chinese MMA fighter, who is very much as much as he wasn't necessarily anything special as an MMA fighter. He was very much a middle of the road mixed martial arts fighter, and also did a bit of journalism. And he decided he was going to speak out against fraudulent martial arts practitioners. This put him in big trouble with the Chinese government. Now, over the last few years, Zhu Xiaodong has fought a number of practitioners of traditional Chinese martial arts, or the Kung Fu, Guanghua, Wushu, whatever it may be. And it's pretty much beaten the fuck out of all of them. And the big thing was he fought a Wing Chun master, which is what Ip Man is described as being. You see the fight. This is the most ridiculous thing ever. The fight was called off 40 seconds before the bell because Zhu was battering this Wing Chun. He just battered this Wing Chun master. And the fight was still declared a draw. He's had his credit rating slashed by the Chinese government so that he's got a glass ceiling financially. He has been forced to compete his matches in clown makeup to humiliate him. And all it has been is his disdain for martial arts frauds, yet the man still keeps going. He is trying to get out of China into Australia if he can at the moment, but he has been forced to financial ruin and humiliated by the Chinese government because he has been humiliating the masters of arts like Wing Chun or Kung Fu. He's demonstrated the superiority of modern MMA. time and time again over these traditional
he's in middle of the road MMA, and he's taking on Chinese,
which is kind of funny, seeing as how modern MMA can, in a way, trace itself back to Ip Man.
Yes,
because one of the biggest founders of modern MMA was Bruce Lee.
Yeah, Jeet Kune Do. But the main thing, I mean, really, this guy Zhu Zedong was against martial arts frauds, and we're talking about the people who would do the goddamn force push chi type shit.
Yeah.
But it ended up with people who were practitioners of Kung Fu and Wing Chun challenging him. He's beaten them all. And it's really, and rather than like being lauded for the Chinese government of saying, maybe we ought to listen to this guy and adopt him, he has been financially ruined by the Chinese government and has been humiliated. Like, he has to fight in clown makeup.
Yeah, so in China you have something that's basically, it's a social credit score.
Yeah.
And it decides everything. It decides what jobs you can go for, how much money you can earn, whether you can get banking facilities, what shops you can buy in. It decides everything.
He had to take this guy had to take a 36-hour train journey for one of his fights because of this. Because he couldn't afford a plane ticket because of what they'd done.
Yeah. They royally fucked him over, basically.
But basically, I'm illustrating this, going for this story to illustrate the point that there has been a big campaign. Traditional Chinese martial arts have been a big part of a campaign around Chinese nationalism.
Yeah.
And Chinese cultural nationalism and cultural superiority.
Yeah.
And because this guy has
disproven that.
He's disproven that time and time again. Has been humiliated because of it. And punished because of it. It's quite a sad story, really, what's happened to him. I really do hope that some other country gets him out there. I know he's been trying to get into Australia. I really do hope he gets out of China and is.
Yeah.
But it's very sad that his only crime was to call out frauds. In all reality, but it shows you that these traditional Chinese martial arts have been pushed as a big part of. This is the cultural heritage of China. These martial arts are superior, blah blah blah, which is the big thing of the whole Ip Man franchise. It was the second film was it's superior to boxing.
Yeah.
It's superior to karate. In the fourth film, it was the whole superiority over Japanese martial arts like karate again.
Yeah. And this is the thing, as a country, you can have your practices, your martial arts, whatever, but there's no reason to take that and claim it's superior.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not to say that the Chinese martial arts are useless. They're not.
They're not at all. They have been built up into something that they're not.
They've been built, they've been built up into a...
And it's kind of sad, given the emphasis that's placed a lot on honour, as we've been saying, and everything else in martial arts.
You know what? And this is just off the cuff, maybe completely baseless, but anyways, you could possibly say that the popularity of kung fu movies has, or or more specifically, the wire fu movies has, ultimately damaged the practice of Chinese martial arts.
Quite possibly, yeah.
By, pushing it as something that's more than what it is.
Yes,
yeah.
You could definitely argue that. And little obviously teaser, Ip Man 4, the small kernel of truth in the fourth film, because Bruce Lee is a character in the film. Yeah. And the small kernel of truth in that is, yes, a lot of the Chinese people who lived in America at the time were not necessarily happy with Bruce Lee teaching kung fu to Westerners.
Yeah.
But Bruce Lee was very conscious of, he'd seen the way Chinese people had been portrayed in, like, the way Chinese people were thought of in America, the way they've been portrayed in films before. I mean, you sort of had the thing with a buck-toothed Chinese.
Yeah, cough, Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Exactly, yeah. That and a big part of it was Bruce Lee was motivated to change that conception, and to his credit, he largely succeeded.
Yeah.
Although maybe another sort of stereotype may have possibly come off the back of that, but
it was a step in the right direction, and it was meant with all the right intention.
But even when there was actually this is before Bruce Lee really got famous in the world. Well, he'd done the Green Hornet, but he'd not really become necessarily like a mega star at this point. Even when there was a genuine sort of attempt to do a series which would be respectful of Chinese traditions and martial arts, they got a Western actor over Bruce Lee who applied for the role to play the part. That was David Carradine in the series Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Bruce Lee went for that role and did not get it.
Yes, but again, it's that thing of, isn't it, things take time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Bruce Lee was coming at it, and he came at it with the one skill he had. He could fight. He could. That was his. Yeah. So he used what he knew, and this is something you find, especially as a minority, anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're a minority and you're good at one thing, people will attribute that to the whole of the.
A couple of things with Bruce Lee that may have changed it. Not just the kung fu, changed the perception. You see some of the interviews.
He's very intelligent.
He is very, very well versed in Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
And he could talk about that. He could really talk about. You realize how intelligent of a man he is. You could listen to him talk about Confucianism or Taoism, whatever. He was very well versed in Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
So, I mean, I'd say in a way that obviously Bruce Lee really started the genre of the kung fu movie.
Yeah,
it did do something to change the perception in the West of Chinese people, which has got to be commended. Now, maybe did it set up other stereotypes? Quite possibly.
Yes, but is that Bruce Lee's fault?
No, it's not his fault. It's just one of those things that it was a. When we look at Ip Man, though, the Ip Man series. I did enjoy. I'm going to say I watched 4 of those films. I enjoyed it. They were a lot of fun, but you do have to have. I think you do have to realize the Chinese nationalist propaganda elements of it. Yeah. I think some people I know who've talked to me about Ip Man do not get that element of it, and you got to also, if you understand that in the context of what has gone on in China, and like the fact that I had to tell the story of Xu Xiaodong, to illustrate the point. You got to have that in as a frame of reference when watching those films, and understand that this is very extremely revisionist in a historical context.
Yeah.
But they are. But all that being said, they are enjoyable movies, all of them.
When it comes to Chinese historical propaganda, I will take Ip Man over Dragon Blade.
Yeah. Most of us would, let's be honest. I will say as well, the reason I laughed when you typed that in the chat earlier, Jeff, is because I thought if anyone's going to be able to tell that story, it's going to be you.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those, not a lot of people are aware of it, and I think more people should be.
Yeah.
There
are a number of brilliant there's a number of brilliant videos about this guy's story on YouTube, including one guy who did an initial video kind of piss taking this guy because he didn't understand what the point of the makeup was, the clown makeup, the Chinese clown makeup. And when he understood the story, I'm just putting a name in the chat, Zhu Xiaodong. Please look this guy's story up. It's quite sad. It's inspirational, but also very sad at the same time. And
it's one of those inspirational stories.
Especially some of us who were in the, shall we say, skeptic kind of community. Martial arts frauds are definitely something we should probably pay attention to, as well as other sort of frauds and
fluffy buttery.
Yeah. Water. But yeah, martial arts frauds, I think, are a bit more insidious because they lead to people getting hurt.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, I will say, if you are looking for a martial arts teacher, please be careful, because the wrong teacher, you can get some serious injuries. This guy is doing a real,
Well, I definitely would say, do your homework before you necessarily join a martial arts school. I would say that. If any of them are doing this no punch chi techniques things, don't fucking join, because it's bollocks. It is demonstrably bullshit.
Yeah,
it definitely pays to do your homework on this stuff.
Yeah, like the closest thing to that actually works is Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch, and we know the physics of the 1-inch punch.
Yes, but George Dillman's not touching you kind of punch is bollocks. Bullshit. It is bollocks.
All it is he surprises you, so your flinch reflex kicks in. That's all it is.
Any of the olds. If you see the name Black Dragon Fighting Society, run a mile. That's complete crap. Ishida Kim, ones I'll warn you, Ishida Kim. Basically, any of these people are like promising abilities that seem like too good to be true from watching some. It's the old adage: if it sounds too good to be true, it
probably is. Yeah.
And it is one of those weird ones. It does become a little bit cultish if you do get involved.
Robert X actually puts this in the choices. It seems to work if you believe it. George Gilman actually said on Discovery Channel when he tried the chi punching on someone who didn't have their eyes closed, so he couldn't sucker punch them because he was known to do that, and like demonstrate his chi techniques to send them flying across the room, and the guy didn't move a fucking inch. His excuse was the guy he was doing on didn't believe in chi.
Yeah,
and that affected it. That is the level of fuckery you're dealing with.
Yeah, so it is important to know that if it doesn't work on non-believers, it's because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Just FYI, folks. And that goes for anything, okay?
Yeah.
There's a reason you don't have to believe in paracetamol for it to, like, ease pain.
So, any final...
Yeah, if you see like things from Street Fighter 2, like they say, hey, you can do the Hadouken, and it works. It's bollocks.
Yeah. Or if anyone's, there's a reason Dragon Ball Z was animated. Because I've seen people claim that they can do things like that as well, and I'm just like, no, you can't. That is physically impossible. So I feel like we've covered a lot of different topics on this.
We have.
Yeah.
Some of them more positive than others.
Yeah, this was actually like probably one of the like, aside from John Wick, this was the deepest we've dug into an action movie.
Yeah, definitely.
I think so. Because there are so many other connotations around it, man.
Yeah.
But for all the criticisms I've made of it, they're enjoyable movies.
Yeah.
They're good fun. They are enjoyable movies.
So basically, they're good movies. Watch them critically and keep in mind that they are propagandistic.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think did that serve as a nice palate cleanser to you as well after our early destroy?
It was nice to be able to discuss things and not be utterly horrified.
Yeah.
Sometime we should get Hops on to discuss Druk.
Yes, I want to discuss Druk with Hops.
Yes,
because that was a brilliant film.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't seen that yet, it's actually up for an Oscar this year.
Yeah.
If you've not seen that,
I have not seen this. You're going to have to tell me about this.
It's not released in the UK yet, but there are ways of seeing it abroad because it's been released abroad if you've got a VPN. Yeah. It's a great film. It's about 4 guys who come across a philosophy that human beings are born with a blood alcohol content level that's ever so slightly too low. And therefore, their philosophy is that you should go through life slightly pissed.
Yeah.
They
basically go out to try and either prove or disprove it.
I'm already on board with that philosophy.
Yeah. And shenanigans really do ensue. So well worth a watch if you get to watch it. Some excellent acting in it, gorgeous set pieces. And just obviously largely English audience here. It is a Danish film and it is in Danish. So you will probably need subtitles, but trust me, it's worth it.
I will say
even
generally,
if you need subtitles, it is well worth it.
I will say generally, so because obviously the film we talked about today, Ip Man, you can watch it dubbed or in subtitles. Personally, I prefer subtitles. I hate dubbing. It's just me.
If you're watching in the US, Netflix only has the sub.
Okay. We got audio dubbing here, and most certainly on the sequels there's always audio dubbing. Yeah. I personally prefer subtitles. That's me.
Yeah. I'm a subtitles person compared to audio dubbing, I think, because I don't know. Sometimes the voice acting on audio dubbing isn't great.
The voice dubbing is bad. It doesn't necessarily get the emotions of the characters across, where you can perhaps
you can read those emotions.
Read all the subtitles, you can read from the inflection or whatever, and the dubbing generally is very dry and
with some languages, you get a bit of a mismatch.
Yeah. You do, and that's very irritating. But yes, I definitely want to discuss Truck with Hops, because that should be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, you do get some problems with dubbing.
Yeah. But
sorry, I couldn't resist it.
Anyways, so final thoughts and Chuck Norris jokes.
It's been a while since I've told a Chuck Norris joke.
Oh, Noodle.
Ring can start. I know Ring has a lot of good Chuck Norris jokes.
I got a load. I got a shit ton.
Oh, well, did you know that? Did you know Chuck Norris was actually president of the U.S. for a while?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he went under the name Teddy Roosevelt at that time.
Not bad. Did you hear Chuck Norris caught COVID-19? The virus has had to go into quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You're looking them up now, aren't you?
I'm just thinking, because I used to know loads of Chuck Norris jokes, but it's been a while.
Or
Chuck Norris once roundhouse kicked the earth. It hasn't stopped spinning since.
Yeah.
They can't put Chuck Norris on Mount Rushmore because the granite's too soft for his beard.
Yeah.
Or what was the other one? When Chuck Norris does a push-up, he pushes the earth away from himself.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find good memes. Chuck Norris hit 11 out of 10 targets with 9 bullets. Hey, Ray.
Chuck Norris doesn't need a gun. He just points his finger and goes, bang, you're dead.
Yeah. I just want to show this one, Ring.
Or there's no such thing as tornadoes. Chuck Norris just doesn't like trailer parks.
Yeah. What's the one just based on that? Oh, what was it? God damn it! I had one in my head then, and then I forgot it.
Did you know Chuck Norris once got bitten by a snake? It died 2 days later.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Then Chuck Norris punched nothing and told it to get a job.
But so, final thoughts.
A great martial arts movie. The so-so propaganda. Understand the context. Don't take it as fact.
Yeah.
What Noodle said.
Yeah. And I do suggest giving them a watch. The fight choreography is amazing.
Yeah.
But you do have to realize that you are watching propaganda.
Yeah.
So, Shilling.
Okay. Obviously, I haven't got anything scheduled for this week necessarily. The wacky world of SJ Thomason's Twitter doesn't seem to be an option for a stream this week now. Sorry, moment of silent prayer for SJ's Twitter that died in the name for our sins.
Well, who knows? It may rise again.
Hold on. It went on Friday. It might be back up today. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might. I don't know. I've really done the Asterisk stream. Noodles the next Sunday at 1 p.m. UK time. That's really fucking early your time, Rang. That's the only thing I've got planned. Otherwise, may do if I can't find a good topic. I might do something this week because I don't think Dave's got any streams planned, which I normally do the critical questions, but I don't think he's got anything penciled in this week. So even if it's just an open hangout, I might do that once or twice this week, so I can find something find a topic to talk about or something. So
yeah,
we'll keep posted. We'll find something. I'm sure there's some idiots on Twitter we could find to. For those who haven't seen, I did a on my channel. Ring's been part of them. We've gone through Pastor Greg Locke's tweets and we've gone through Kevin Sorbo's tweets over the past month or so, and it's been
you're braver than I am.
Let's just say it's been an experience.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
So anyone knows any like famous idiots we can look at it through their Twitter? Let me know.
I really want to see you two go after the transformed wife. I just do.
Ring, I think we have a stream this week.
So am I gonna have to tie my hand behind my back?
Oh god damn! Do Paul and Morgan have a Twitter account? Let me know. Or girl to find any. Let's have a, I think we got a thing with a transformed wife there. We're gonna have to have a look at that.
Yeah.
The transformed wife is a meme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I've got secular D&D on Saturday and Media Musings on Sunday. Tomorrow or next week, we will be discussing Shanghai Noon.
I haven't watched that movie in years. I'm looking forward to this.
I haven't watched that in like 10, 15 years or whatever.
Yeah, I've got the DVD somewhere uncut. I need to dig it out.
I'm gonna have to find that and watch that.
And of course, I have a Teespring and a Patreon, and thank you to Geo Sam and Santi the Sane, my two patrons.
And I am looking to set myself up gaming streaming. I'm not going to do it on Twitch. I'm going to do it on YouTube because Twitch confuses me. I will sort it out. It should be either this Monday or next Monday. I'm getting there. And I'm going to be playing Death Stranding, so I'm going to make that a weekly thing. I've never played computer games before. I'm not a computer game person. So this is going to be interesting.
You need to do some of the... Oh, God, we need to get you on some old school video games.
The last time I played video games, I was on a mini PS1 in my bedroom.
Oh no! I mean, we got to got to see if we can get some like Atari 2600 games or Nintendo, NES or Sega Mega Drive games for you to play.
I did play Sega. I did play. I played Sonic and I played Space Invaders on a Sega. I remember that.
Sonic the Hedgehog on the Mega Drive was a classic. That's the Genesis for Americans. So.
Yeah. So I will be.
I might do gaming streams when I can afford a PS5 and can actually do it.
Also, just a heads up, I'm 32 away from the Embarrassing Story stream.
Get more subs to Ring. Trust me, you need this stream in your life.
Yep.
It's going to be a long stream, but trust me, you need it.
you just want me to tell the helmet story on
the helmet story. There's the camel pack story. The
Noodle is 29 subscribers away from 100 now as well.
There's the cooker story.
2 today.
Yeah. I have to find something to do special for 100 subs.
I'm cutting on 350, but I'm not going to do anything. Maybe when I get to 400, I might do something for that. But
yeah, I'll have to do something for 100 subs. I haven't decided what yet.
My ultimate aim would be to hit 1,000 this year, but I don't see that happening. That would be my ultimate aim.
Let's get Scummer to 1,000.
Yeah.
Mainly so I can point you back at this stream and say, what was that about? You didn't see it happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'll come up with something to do for 100 subs. So sub if you want to know about that. And you'll probably know as soon as I do what the plan is for that one. But yeah, there are many, many embarrassing stories with Ring. The cooker story, the camel pack story, the helmet story, the knee story, the Manchester story.
I'm going to ask one of you guys to share this in the chat. I just put a link to my Patreon there. I forgot to plug that.
Yeah.
Talked about that on Noodle stream earlier. Trying to do some private content for patrons as well. I did a watch through of a boxing match from 1910 on my stream the other day. The fight between Jack Johnson and Jim Jeffries for the World Heavyweight Championship, but more talking about the history and all the racial overtones of that fight for the time, which I've only got 3 patrons, but I've heard some very good things about that video. So thanks, Ring.
Yep. And so taglines.
May all of your stains be large ones.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, use your noodle.
And remember, indoctrination is a hell of a selfie stick, so don't choke on it.